No one happened. Nothing? Where's your phone? Yeah. Where's your phone? Huh? You dial this number and then just get on. I'm gonna go on the computer.
You can't get on?
Mm-mm. You dial this phone number, dial this phone number.
You need phone numbers, and say, hit my phone. Shit.
408, 408,
Good thing.
418,
One,
418, 9388. Here's your. 2556 894 8690. And then put pound. Oh, yeah. Are you getting anything?
no,
Why is speaker on? How does the speaker on with me?
I don't know. No, you knocked me off. I'm not getting anything. This is-
All right, let's go. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, March 31st at or about 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall boardroom and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all plan commissioners present except for Ms. Hank and Mr. Shadid, who is joining us via WebEx.
Bill Shadid will be joining us. I don't know if he's online at the moment. He did indicate that he may be running a little late.
I'm actually
getting
not.
on.
I'm here now.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, sure thing.
All right, and then Ms. Hank, did she,
She did tell us that she will not
Last
be
time,
here.
that's what I
She's
thought.
Out of
That's-
town.
wanted to be confirmed? Okay, very good. Then we will then go to the approval of minutes from the Plan Commission meeting on 3/10/2025.
Move approval is presented.
Motion made and seconded to approve the Plan Commission meetings from March 10th of 2025. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? Yes, sir. Mr. Williams.
Item on vote for the minutes from the prior meeting. There's two commissioners identified as abstaining, William and Bridget. I was actually one of the abstainers as opposed to William, as I was not present at the prior meeting.
Okay.
So it says I voted in approval, but
Yes,
Mr.
on
Shadid?
that- On that same item, I was there. I didn't abstain. This is Shadid.
Okay, then. All right, then shall we make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Okay, we need a second. Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes as amended? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That then takes us to new business, item A.
Mr. President,
Sir?
before we get into item A, I have been informed that my conflict of interest has subsided since Gray Wolf is no longer part of the project, so I will not be stepping down tonight.
Or abstaining? Is
Or
that what you're
abstaining.
saying?
Correct.
All right, thank you for that announcement. Then new business item A is public hearing regarding the proposed creation of a tax incremental district number 10, including the proposed boundaries of and proposed project plan for the district, followed by consideration and possible action on a resolution establishing the boundaries and approving the project plan for tax incremental district number 10 on tonight's agenda for public hearing and action. To give us more information background on this new business item, we'll turn the meeting over to our Director of Community Development, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed back on March 10th, the village board has authorized staff to move forward on the public-private partnership to guide redevelopment of an outdated area within the village center district with a mix of new residential and commercial retail land uses consistent with the village's 2050 plan. The area is located in the southeast corner of the Mequon at Pilgrim Road intersection, includes the former Flower Source and current Ascension Columbia St. Mary's properties. It was discussed then that if the board decided to proceed with the proposal, the consultants, Copeland Companies and Rinka, along with our financial advisor, Ehlers, would be back to guide the village through the next steps. The purpose for tonight's JRB and PC meetings are just that, starting the process of creating a proposed tax incremental financing district, what would be TID number 10, for the redevelopment area. As we'll hear, TID 10 is a proposed rehabilitation TID for the purpose of paying the cost of land acquisition, site preparation, including demolition and cleanup, the construction of public infrastructure, developer incentives, and professional service costs that are necessary to prepare development-ready sites for redevelopment. As presented in the TID project plan that will be discussed in greater detail this evening, the project costs are estimated to be approximately $49.2 million that will yield an estimated increase in value of $84.6 million of land improvements within the TID area. Redevelopment in TID 10 is expected to occur in multiple phases and result in additional shopping, employment, housing, and recreational opportunities around a central plaza or market plots available for community events and public use. Wisconsin tax incremental financing law, specifically statute 66.1105, requires that a public hearing be held before the Plan Commission to give residents an opportunity to express their views on the proposed TID. And also it requires the Plan Commission to consider adoption of a resolution to recommend approval of the boundaries of the TID and the project plan. After tonight's public hearing, the Plan Commission is required to act on the proposed resolution, copy of which was in your packet, and forward their decision to the Village Board and JRB, the Joint Review Board, for further consideration and action. With that, I'd like to introduce Bailey Copeland and John Cameron to further discuss the TID project. Thank you.
Good evening. Many of you might be familiar with what I'm about to present, but for those who are new, I'd like to start with a brief overview of the project. This all began as the outcome of the 2050 plan, where the village has been diligently working to bring the vision to life. I'll walk you through the project's origins, where we currently are, and the next steps moving forward. Before we dive into the details, I want to remind you of the three main objectives of the 2050 plan, which are central to this catalytic project. Housing, expanding housing opportunities to support the village's growth and future demand. Economic development, encouraging local business growth and attracting new ones to keep residents engaged within the community. And land use, creating a cohesive land use plan that balances efficient development with the projection of natural resources. Let's discuss the strong demand for multifamily housing in Germantown. As a population grows and household sizes decrease, there's a need for more diverse housing options, especially multifamily units. The 2050 plan highlights that a mix of housing types is essential to meet the varying needs of residents at different stages and income levels. As stated in the 2050 plan, there is no one-size-fits-all ratio of multifamily to single-family housing. Rather, a mix of housing types can provide options to individuals and families with different income and preferences, which change over time and in different stages of life. Currently, multifamily development in the area are operating at 95% occupancy or higher, with low vacancy rates across nearby communities. As you can see, Germantown is 2.5 vacancy, Mequon is 1.1, Menominee Falls is 4.6, Cedarburg is 2.3%. The high demand indicates the need for over 1,000 additional multifamily units in Germantown over the next 5 years, as stated in the market studies, reinforcing the importance of diverse housing options to support our growing community. The 2050 plan outlines clear next steps, which will be reviewed this evening, showing where things stand with each of them. Key development parcels have been identified with the catalytic opportunity zone as a major focus. The 2050 plan stresses high-quality development and flexibility, ensuring financial success for investors while aligning with the village's long-term vision. The village has collaborated with residents and stakeholders to attract qualified developers who reflect community desires. Significant due diligence has been conducted to ensure this area is suitable for this type of development outlined in the 2050 plan. Due diligence is critical to development outline. Due diligence is a critical component involving asking the right questions to guarantee smart development that aligns with the needs for both residents and the village, while also anticipating and addressing potential future issues. Through the master planning process led by Rinka, a thoughtful conceptual vision has been developed to ensure connectivity and efficient access. It's important to note that this vision begins with the infrastructure plan, allowing for future adaptation as developers come on board and properties become available. The goal is to create one cohesive, well thought out plan for the future, starting with the framework and remaining flexible. I will provide more on that later. The main reason we are before you this evening is to discuss the tax increment district, which is just one of the financing tools that may be utilized. John from Ehlers will go more in depth in TID 10 later this evening. In addition, other programs and incentives are being explored, including various grant opportunities that align with the project. These grants will provide additional financial support, particularly for aspects of the project that focus on public and community-centered goals, infrastructure improvements, and environmental sustainability, while also collaborating with developers and the RFP process or request for proposals for the first phase. It is essential that the village's short-term and long-term goals align. The vision statements have always been central to the planning process, ensuring a thoughtful plan can be executed appropriately with a long-term vision in mind. This will continue throughout the completion of the project. The village currently controls 3 properties, 2 of which have closed, and 1 is scheduled to close in June. We continue to collaborate with property owners and tenants interested in being part of this project. At the last Planning Commission meeting, Sam from Von Briesen and Roper presented an overview of the new mixed-use zoning district as outlined in the 2050 plan. Additionally, as part of the next steps, the creation of the Planned Development District, or PDD, and the necessary legal documents will be developed to ensure a cohesive, high-quality development. Some of the community engagement activities and timelines that have taken place are outlined on the screen. The first is the master planning visioning sessions began by outlining what residents wanted as detailed in the 2050 plan. We focused on understanding which planning principles were most important to them, what they valued about the community, and the activities they'd like to see. It was an opportunity to explore what makes uniquely Germantown, taking the time to dream and learn together. The second visioning session focused on building upon the top 4 principles identified in the first session. During this time, we continued our research. We also engaged additional stakeholders to gather input on the principles most important to the residents, researching the mix of uses, Germantown's uniqueness and character, a strong economic base, and an amenity-rich public realm, and gathering more resident feedback. From there, Rinka began the master planning process and presented a conceptual, experiential village center plan. At this meeting, we received positive, optimistic feedback on the framework and the opportunities for this development area. This marked the beginning of a conceptual framework to build upon, starting with a vision of what this could become. This is what emerged from those meetings, was a conceptual framework for development in land use zones, along with land use recommendations. Instead of defining the exact appearance of the development, the focus is on establishing the quality of development, incorporating the amenities requested by residents in the 2050 plan envisioning sessions, and outlining a layout that allows for phasing and flexibility. The vision also prioritizes connectivity and efficient access. It's important to note that this vision starts with the infrastructure plan, enabling future adaptation as developers join the project and properties become available. The goal is to create one cohesive, well-thought-out plan for the future, beginning with the framework and remaining adaptable. The 2050 plan and visioning sessions identified this as a catalytic opportunity to create a key gateway and distinct identity for the community, centered around Pilgrim and Mequon Road. The plan also draws inspiration from successful gateway projects in neighboring communities. In addition to the primary visual gateway at the intersection, access will be provided excuse me, at 2 other locations along Mequon and Pilgrim Road. The creation of the market plots as a community space is uniquely Germantown, serving as a destination for both residents and surrounding communities. It provides a space that residents have voiced as needed, which currently doesn't exist in Germantown. Envisioned to be the gathering place for various events, allowing the community to come together and create lasting memories for generations to come. For some visualization, here are some conceptual renderings to help visualize what this could look like. These concepts reflect the development ideas, a gateway design, and what uniquely Germantown could become. Think retail, food, and beverage spaces to attract the corner and create a vibrant community hub. Here is a rendering of the envisioned access gateway along Pilgrim Road, just south of Mequon Road. Circling back to what the market plots could look like, what some of you may have seen before, this illustrates the potential experience it could offer residents. This is a vision of what a typical day would look like when the street is open. Brinka's vision is centered around the principles of public space, focusing on creating a great environment with well-defined enclosures supported by an excellent roadways that can be closed off during events. This creates flexibility, multi-purpose space driven by the market. With ample parking and access, it allows for a dynamic event space. The mix of uses helps create the mix of uses helps attract commercial ground floor areas, fostering a vibrant community. And here's the marketplace on a day when the access street is closed adjacent to the market plots, allowing for more space and larger events to expand, creating an environment area larger for other uses. And then thinking about 4 seasons of what this could look like. Now I'd like to turn it over to John from Ehlers to speak on the tax increment district.
Okay. Good evening. I'm John Cameron, Senior Municipal Advisor with Ehlers. To start with the schedule for the proposed tax increment district creation, work on the project plan began in February with the board's decision to move forward with the feasibility and creation of tax incremental finance district number 10. In early March, notices to the property owners within the boundaries of the tax increment district were sent out. Tonight is the initial joint review board meeting, which happened at 5:30 p.m. and that's made up of representatives from all of the overlapping taxing jurisdictions within the TIF district's boundary. And then Plan Commission meeting happening tonight with the action item being the recommendation onto the village board, the approval of the boundary of the TIF district and the project plan scheduled for action at the village board's April 21st meeting. In early May, the joint review board will convene one final time to take an up or down vote as to whether or not the project plan meets the statutory requirements for the creation of a tax incremental finance district, and really whether it satisfies the but-for test, and that is but for the use of tax incremental financing, the development either wouldn't occur in the manner and quality that the village would like to see, or in the timeline that the village would like to see. And then after that process concludes, assuming everything is approved, the documents are sent on to the Department of Revenue later this fall. Just a few examples before we get into the kind of the nuts and bolts of the project plan. Just a few examples where tax incremental financing has been implemented to and fundamentally changed the dynamics of a community. Tax incremental financing really is the vehicle and the primary tool in the toolbox for municipalities to attract or retain economic development. It is the tool to recover project costs that are made eligible expenses within the context of a project plan. Some of these examples include the Village of Pewaukee's downtown area, City of Oak Creek's Town Center project, West Bend's downtown and riverfront, Cedarburg, City of Cedarburg's downtown, Mequon's Town Center concept, the Village of Sussex's downtown area, same with Village of Grafton, and then the Corners development in the town of Brookfield. One other item to highlight here is how tax incremental financing interacts with school funding across the state of Wisconsin. And this is a snippet from the Public Policy Forum report on school district funding, and it specifically pulls from the equalization formula and how it works in terms of funding schools. It's kind of hard to see on screen, so I'll read it. The formula, the equalization formula, operates under the principle of an equal tax rate for equal per pupil expenditures. In its pure form, this means that a school district's property tax rate does not depend on the property tax base of the district, but on the level of expenditures. The rate at which school costs are aided through the formula is determined by comparing a school district's per pupil tax base to the state's guaranteed tax base. Equalization aid is provided to make up the difference between the district's actual tax base and the state guaranteed tax base. Thus, there is an inverse relationship between the equalization aid and property valuations. Those districts with low per pupil property valuations receive a larger share of their costs through the equalization formula than districts with high per pupil property valuations. So as a tax incremental finance district interacts with school financing, what you see is schools are held neutral in the existence of a tax incremental finance district. During the TIF district's life, you tend to see more state aid, and as the TIF district closes, that state aid decreases and property tax value increases as that tax aid comes into the school district from the TID out side of the ledger. So the school district is held harmless during the TIF district's life. Where a school district can benefit from a tax incremental finance financially is if the TIF district closes with a positive fund balance. Positive fund balances within a TIF district at the time of closure are distributed proportionately to the overlapping taxing jurisdictions, including the village, based on the proportionate share of tax levies in the statement of taxes for a municipality. One final thing before getting into the nuts and bolts of the project plan is how TIF and property acquisition is handled in terms of it being an eligible project expense. Property acquisition is included in the state statute as an eligible project expense, and the definition is that real property assembling costs, meaning any deficit incurred from the sale or lease by the city of real property within a tax increment district for consideration, which is less than its cost to the city. The deficit or the write-down between what the municipality is purchasing it for and what it is ultimately sold for occurs at the time of the sale, regardless of when the land was purchased. In terms of the executive summary of TID 10, it's a proposed rehabilitation district, which means it has a maximum lifespan under 27 years as 27 years under state statute, comprises a little over 42 acres. It has to have at least 50% of the acreage within the TIF district boundary as in need of rehabilitation. The project plan estimates that the land within the district boundary at the time of its creation, 51.55%, meets the definition of rehabilitation. There's a total project costs that are listed in the project plan of $49 million, potentially completed over 3 different phases as eligible expenses. And the revenue within the TIF district is estimated at $84 million. And that is just over the 2 phases of the 3 phases that is shown in the town center concept plan. And it is currently estimated to take the full lifespan of the TID to recover all project expenses. The proposed boundary of the district is shown on screen in red. when a TIF district is created and the boundary map is drawn, it has to be contiguous in nature. It also has to include the whole parcel. So the land within the TIF district to the north of Mequon Road, along Mequon Road, and then running to the south along Pilgrim Road. And I'll talk through kind of the phasing concept here in a second. The development projections are estimated in two phases within the boundary of the district. Phase 1 shown in blue up to Mequon Road at the north and along Pilgrim Road, and then to the back of the TIF district boundary to the east. And then phase 2 right at the corner of Mequon Road and Pilgrim Road. In terms of the development summary, phase 1 consists of both multifamily and potential commercial development. Areas A and B on the map along Pilgrim Road are proposed or potential multifamily development, with area A consisting of approximately 210 units from a planning standpoint, and area B 104 units. Area F within is also included as multifamily development or potential multifamily development within phase 1. That's a little bit further to the north, estimated at 90 units. Phase 2 consists of commercial development along Pilgrim Road and Mequon Road, with areas C and D, approximately 18,000 square feet of potential development estimated in the project plan, and then area F in the top part of along Mequon Road in pink at 10,000 square feet approximately. From a project cost standpoint, the phase 1 project costs include the potential acquisition of the flower shop site, the vacant parcel owned by Ascension and the Ascension property, demolition and cleanup of those sites to be acquired, the infrastructure to serve the flower shop site off of Pilgrim Road, as well as professional service costs related to the acquisition of property, as well as the market study and various studies, including the creation of the tax incremental finance district. The total estimated project costs in this phase are $11 million, not including interest on potential general obligation notes for these project expenses. In terms of the development, the flower store site, which is really this multifamily in phase 1, is approximately 300 units valued at $175,000 per unit, with an assumed build out or an estimated build out over a 2-year period of time. The Ascension site, the facility after acquired would still be operated, at least revenue coming back to the village. That facility would then be demoed after the lease is over and made available for development, with approximately 90 units of housing at $200,000 per unit, with assumed build out in the project plan between 2031 and 2032, and then 10,000 square feet of retail development estimated to occur in 2032. And then there's also included in the project plan the decrement value of the demolition of the Ascension building when it is demolished, and that's included within the cash flow estimate. The total estimated value of the taxable value netting against the 5.2 million of decrement value is approximately $69 million. In terms of the key assumptions on the cash flow for just the phase 1 development, the overall current tax rate within the village is $13.48 per thousand of equalized value. We're assuming in the project plan a decline in that tax rate of 0.025% annually from a conservative standpoint. And then property appreciation increasing 2% annually on the increment that is generated. The financing for for both the land acquisition and the infrastructure work is based on current interest rates with some cushion built in for potential market movement between now and the time that financing would occur. The highlight is that phase one has positive cash flow, assuming both the development projections are realized, as netted out against the project costs. When you also factor in a conservative estimate of $2.1 million of potential land sale revenue. And it's important to note that that $2.1 million of land sale revenue is an estimate. Certainly, the hope that you realize more in that land sale revenue, but it's really from a stress test standpoint what is doable within the context of the TID cash flow analysis. The development assumptions from the project plan are shown here. I highlighted on the last previous page, but you see the build out of the flower store development shown between 2027 and 2028, 50-50 between those 2 years. The Ascension development, first the demo of the existing building in the project plan in 2030, and then build out of $18 million of incremental value between 2031 and 2032, with the retail on the Ascension site occurring or estimated to occur in 2032 to the tune of the $69,050,000. In terms of the incremental value and how tax increment comes into all TIF districts, this page is from the project plan. The total value that comes in, really there's a 2-year lag from the time that value occurs to the time that you have tax increment revenue coming into the district. So if the first year of construction is estimated to occur in 2027. That value, that construction would be valued as of January 1, 2028, with tax increment revenue coming in 2029. So tax bills go out in December of 28, tax revenue starts in 2029. So you can see the tax increment revenue coming in for phase one throughout the lifespan of the district. The total future value increment of phase one is a little over $26.3 million. The highlight from the phase one cash flow analysis, if you're looking at the left-hand side of the page, we have total projected revenues from the tax incremental finance district. The primary source is TID increment revenue. There's also interest income that could be realized within any cumulative fund balance within the TIF district over its lifespan. So there's a minor amount of incremental interest earnings. Initially, it builds up more over time if the cumulative balance of the TID increases. There is rental income from the Ascension property through the expiration of the lease in 2028. And then you've got assumed land sale revenue of $2.1 million occurring in slugs in 2026 and 2030 in this estimated cash flow analysis. The expenses are shown in the columns in green. In this project plan, it's assumed that those would be done through conventional general obligation notes. The property acquisitions would occur through a taxable general obligation note in 2025, and then a promissory note later in 2025 for the infrastructure expenses along Pilgrim Road. Showing it in the project plan does not at all lock the village into incurring those expenses. It also does not lock the village into incurring those expenses through conventional financing. If the village is able to work with the developer or developers to have them undertake those infrastructure costs and get paid back through the increment of the village, you certainly have the ability to do so through what's called a municipal revenue obligation. That is not a general obligation of the village. The nice factor to that is it shifts the risk from the village to the developer, as it's not a general obligation of the village. On the far right-hand side is the balances of phase one of the TIF district. There's an annual balance and a cumulative balance. The annual balance, this is the difference between revenues generated in any one particular year netted against the expenses that are incurred in that particular year. The cumulative fund balance is the culmination of fund balance over the lifespan of the TIF district for just this phase one of development. And the cumulative fund balance remains positive through that phase one development in the project plan, assuming the development occurs on the timeline that is outlined in the project plan against the expenses that are incurred at the same time, also as outlined in the project plan. From a cash flow standpoint, you can have a deficit annually in terms of just your revenues versus your expenses. But really what you're wanting to be watchful of or mindful of is the cumulative fund balance of the tax incremental finance district. A positive cumulative balance suggests that the TIF district can pay for the project expenses over its lifespan with the revenues that are generated from development within that first phase. A deficit assumes that the project costs are too great against the potential expenses. Having a cumulative deficit for a short period of time is certainly, something that municipalities have to endure as development occurs. But really, what you want to guard against is having a structural deficit for a prolonged period of time. It suggests that you need another source of revenue to pay for project costs, and that's not what is shown within this first phase of development. When you bring in phase two is potential development that is shown in this box in red at the corner of Mequon Road and Pilgrim Road. It includes, from an expense standpoint, the acquisition of the BMO and BP properties at that corner, assuming that they are sold and the property is moved forward with in terms of cleanup and made available for development, as well as infrastructure, potential infrastructure to serve development off of Mequon Road and access the site off of Mequon Road, as well as professional service costs related to the acquisition of property and market and other various studies. The total estimated costs in phase two are approximately $11 million. From a development standpoint, what's shown in phase two in the project plan on the BP and BMO sites is 48 units of multifamily development valued at $175,000 per unit, built out in the project plan in 2031, with 21,000 square feet of retail development built out in 2030 through 2032. There's also the decrement that we have to plan for the demolishment of both the BMO and BP buildings. That is also taken into consideration in the TID project plan. The total estimated value of development in phase two is $15.5 million. Bringing those phases, both phase one and phase two together in the cash flow analysis, using the same assumptions on tax rate and growth rate projections, as well as interest rate assumptions. Both phase one and phase two has a positive cash balance, assuming both the development projections in the plan netted against the timing of the expenses in the plan are realized. When you also factor in at least a minimum of $2.1 million in land sale revenue, as well as $6 million in other revenue and grants outside of the increment within the tax incremental finance district. Expanding the development assumptions out beyond just phase one, which is shown on the left-hand side of the page. Phase two includes the retail development along the corners of Pilgrim and Mequon roads, starting in 2030 out through 2032. Residential development estimated in 2031, with the demolishment of both the BP and BMO buildings estimated to occur in 2029. The cash flow analysis is shown on this next page. And again, same sort of concept in terms of setup between revenues on the left-hand side and expenses in the right-hand side, with phase two expenses being added into this cash flow analysis. The cumulative fund balance remains positive throughout its lifespan. It does get fairly skinny in 2000, starting in really 2040, and then builds back up through the remaining lifespan of the district, but it does remain positive from a cumulative fund balance standpoint. So in summary, the final project costs and development, these are estimates in terms of what you see in the project plan, will be negotiated with potential developers, assuming the development moves forward. The current projections assume conservative estimates for project expenses. The village will continue to seek, or will seek, grants and other funding sources to reduce the overall financial impact. Along with that, as it pertains to infrastructure-related expenses, certainly entering into a development agreement and financing those expenses with the developer through a municipal revenue obligation, as opposed to upfront general obligation financing, is certainly something that is also within the wherewithal of the village to do and proceed, as long as it's supported through the development agreement. And then the third phase of development that is in the boundary of the TIF district, while there is project costs that are shown in the project plan, those are not included in the cash flow analysis in terms of evaluating revenues and expenses, because at this time, there's not estimated revenues for phase three of development that is yet to be determined. There's also not estimates of additional increment in terms of the cash flow analysis for land beyond, that is in the TIF district, beyond just phase one and phase two. The project costs are supportable with just the phase one and phase two development assumptions. And that concludes the presentation. Happy to turn it back over.
Okay. Mr. Retzloff?
I think if there are any questions from the Plan Commission members before we jump into the public hearing. So John, you might want to stay up here.
Trustee Baum?
So I know we're going to be bombarded with a lot of questions, a lot of comments, but what is the purview of this commission? Are we talking about finances, or are we just talking about zone and potential buildings?
But for.
Go ahead. Go.
Sorry. Really, the action item tonight is approving the boundaries of the TIF district and the project plan onto the village board for take up in April.
Project plan, including financial aspects of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Williams?
Got a lot of financial questions, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. First, the tax decrement you talk about for BMO and BP is only $700,000. Is that what you're saying? Those two properties are only on the tax roll right now for $700,000?
That's just the improvement value of those properties. So the property in total, the value is the land and improvements. That 700,000 is just the improvement value of those structures.
Okay. Second question, can you talk about your assumptions for the reduction in the tax rate as well as the appreciation of the value? The reason I ask is if you run just phase one without those assumptions, you decrease your tax incremental revenue by $5.4 million, which means you're assuming that 21% of your increased tax value comes from the assumption that your value of your land improvements is going to increase by 2% per year. So can you just talk about that as well as the 25 basis point reduction in tax rate?
Sure. So municipalities, the village included, have largely seen a declining tax rate over time. And that's a result of really two things. The biggest one is levy limit. So you have a tax levy that really is only allowed to increase by the increase in net new construction on an annual basis, as compared against the fairly large increase in equalized value across the state, including the village, that has occurred over that lifespan. So if you have a tax levy that remains relatively flat versus an increasing property tax base that drives your tax rate down, you know, this is a long duration period of time, and obviously the tax rate is going to ebb and flow proportionately. You know, from an assumption standpoint, it's conservative to assume, you know, a potential decline in tax rate. I personally think we're going to eventually reach a point where that's going to start to at least flatten out and potentially start to increase again. You know, from a development standpoint, given the mixture of development that you've got, you know, residential as well as commercial values, again, just seeing some of the, you know, historical increases in the economic value change in equalized values, it's assumed that it's going to increase at least 2%. I think the hope is that it obviously increases far more than that on an annual basis.
So 2% annually over a 27-year period. So we're counting on a 2% increase every year for 27 years as part of that assumption for the tax revenue that we're generating. Again, it's 21% of the overall tax incremental revenues coming from just that appreciation assumption. So I just want to make sure.
No,
that
you're
yeah.
correct on that. But
Yeah.
again, you know, the other factor too is that those values, the 175,000 per unit, 200,000 per unit, those could potentially come in higher too. Maybe you don't have 2%, but you have higher values coming in, you know, at the time that development occurs. So it's an estimate, it's a planning estimate.
Okay. And then the question on the values used for your estimated acquisition of BP and BMO. I mean, have there been any conversations? Have we received appraisals on these properties to know about what we're saying we would be estimating to be paying? And is BMO aware that we're giving them a number in our and BP, we're giving them a number of what we estimate we're going to pay them in this analysis? I mean, I'm just wondering where we are in those negotiations if we're doing
Yeah,
that.
I can maybe speak to the second part first in terms
Okay.
of including a number in the project plan. I mean, that is, you've got to include those project costs, and that's the downside of, you know, of having a, you know, transparent project plan is you do, you know, include those. Those are just estimates at this stage of the game. But, you know, in order to make them eligible project expenses, you've got to include an estimate in the project plan of those expenses. I don't know, Bailey, if you want to speak to the other question.
As far as conversations with both the BMO owner, the tenant, and also the owner of the BP, conversations have continued with all three of those parties. Some numbers have been discussed, some are more firm than others, but those are continuing. There's a lot of logistics that go into moving parts with both of those negotiations that are still underway.
One last one and I'll wrap it up. You have $6 million of other revenue in the cash flow analysis. I might have missed that when you were discussing it. Can you just explain what that $6 million?
Yeah, it's really when you start to bring in the phase 2 project expenses, what's shown in the plan is that you do need $6 million of other revenue in order to take on those, help take on those expenses netted against the development within that phase 2. So those could certainly include grants. It could also include revenue sharing from another tax incremental finance district. So that could also be a potential.
Okay, so included in the analysis is an assumption that we need to generate $6 million more revenue, but we don't know today exactly where that $6 million would come from.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Ewert?
You have a slide that shows a half-mile radius rendering. Can you discuss what that half-mile buffer is, or what that zone is, and what it means to the properties that are in it?
Sure. It's not in the, yeah, it's in the project plan, but it's not in the slides. Under state statute, tax incremental finance districts have the ability to incur project costs within a half mile, within the district boundary, but then up to within a half mile radius of the boundary of the TIF district, provided that there are expenses that can be demonstrated to benefit the tax incremental finance district. So the properties that are within a half mile radius, there's absolutely no impact to those properties. Even properties within the TIF district, those properties will continue to be taxed as they normally would. It's just as the tax revenue comes in, how it gets distributed between the overlapping taxing jurisdictions, including the village, and that for the base value of those properties, the tax revenue as it comes in will continue to flow to the village and the county and the tech college and the school district as it normally would. Any tax revenue that gets generated on the incremental value within the boundary of the TIF district will remain within the TIF district to pay for eligible project expenses. And that really is the key to tax incremental financing is being able to use the taxing power of the overlapping taxing jurisdictions to pay for project costs, and that is met through that but-for test. But for the use of tax incremental financing, the development either wouldn't occur in the manner and quality or in the timeline that the village would like to see. The half mile radius is really just the incursion of project costs that exist outside the boundary of the TID, but still benefit the tax incremental finance district. And in the project plan, there's the trail project as listed as an eligible expense in phase 3, that parts of it flow outside the TIF district boundary, but within the half mile radius.
What about infrastructure costs for potential school expansion?
No.
Even if it falls within that?
It's tax incremental financing cannot be used to pay for school district expenses.
I'm talking about village expenses that may need to occur in regards to the expansion of school.
Oh, your infrastructure type expenses?
Yes.
There's nothing that's contemplated in the project plan, but to the extent it benefits the TIF district benefits from those expenses. It certainly could become an eligible expense provided you go through an amendment process to add that to the project plan list of eligible expenses and make it eligible.
So one would probably be able to argue that a appropriate sized school for the residents that are being added in regards to this project would enhance or improve the viability of the project, correct?
I don't necessarily follow you.
So you're saying it has to tie to direct enhancement of the TID, or right?
Correct. But it
expenditure in
cannot
that
be used,
zone.
it cannot be used for expenses that are incurred by a school district. This is.
I'm not talking about occurred by the school district, but if the village would need to add some infrastructure around a school to ensure safe ingress, egress, and or municipality or municipal
Sure.
works in regards to school size.
To the extent it benefits the tax increment district
Mhm.
and you go through an amendment process to make it eligible, those expenses could be added to the TID.
Yeah, I'm assuming
In
the
the
people,
future,
I'm assuming the
yeah.
people living in the TID would want a strong school that their children go to, so.
Mhm.
That's the lineage I'm drawing to it. I'll hold the rest of my questions for now.
Okay. Planner Retzloff. Does that conclude?
Josh, did you have a question?
I'm sorry?
Currently, you said it was proposed to take the whole 27 years to close. If the property, do you have a deficit figured in on those? Or what price is that selling the properties that we own and plan to own at? What we
The-
paid for them or what they appreciate to, or less than that? If
The
it's,
land to be incurred, the project costs.
yeah,
That is shown. The land acquisition costs in phase 1 include 1 million for flower source, 700,000 for the Ascension vacant parcel, 5 million for the Ascension parcel. And then remnant pieces, 645,000 for the flower source, and Ascension vacant parcel.
So if someone doesn't pay that for it or it sells for less than that, then does that change the 27 years?
That's the cost that we're assuming the village is purchasing that land for.
Yeah. But then you're gonna sell it to a developer, right? So I'm just saying, if there's a difference between what we paid for it and what the developer pays us for it, what does that do to the TID?
Potentially it changes the magnitude of the cash flow analysis. What we do have is at a minimum, 2.1 million of land sale revenue coming in to help support the overall revenues of the TIF district.
And then I guess maybe for Bailey, but I know you can't speak to the negotiations a whole lot, but are we confident in those negotiations? Because phase 2 doesn't happen without those 2 parcels being acquired?
Well, as far as the reference of the $2.1 million in sale, that's where the whole RFP or request for proposal process comes in. It's going to be a competitive process. And that is an assumption of being very, very conservative. You know, what is the stress test? Hoping that that will go far exceed that. This also assumes that you know, the village would be taking on a lot of this infrastructure. We are hoping that through this process, we will get the developers to pay for all of this. So these assumptions are worst case scenarios to still have this to be successful. So this is the minimum. We're hoping it is going to go far beyond that through the process. As far as the phase 2 process, I mean, I just had another conversation with the BP owner today. I'm in constant contact with them. I talked with DEMA last week. So there is continued conversations with all of the parties that are involved.
And the negotiations that you're having, the assumptions are kind of in line with what was in the analysis?
Certain ones you know, there's ones that are more conservative and other ones that are not. Because there's been farther conversations with the owners.
Thank you.
Trustee Baum?
Until you get a developer to the table, all these numbers are in flux.
Correct.
So we can't finalize any of this. We can't lock in anything until we get a developer.
Correct. And so the process has been, we went out for a request for proposals and to gauge how many people would really be interested in coming to the village of Germantown to develop on a project like this. The next step is going out for request for proposal. In order for us to go out for request for proposal, we need to know what we're asking the developers to build. You know, approximately how many units, what height, what type of density are those things going to be, which goes to the zoning that has been talked about at previous commissions. Once we get that answer, we're ready to go out and it's going to be a competitive process to see what they're bringing to the table. How much are they going to pay for the land? What are they going to ask, if anything, from the village to get this done? So until we get to that point, so we can compare apples to apples, you know, that is what's the holdup on being able to bring those developers to the table.
But what Ayers has done is put in a scenario of estimates that still allow it to cash flow. So it almost is a baseline minimum of what it needs to be. And anything beyond that, it just puts it more onto the revenue side.
Correct.
Mr. Williams?
Going back to. Follow up on a second. Do we have appraisals on these properties so we know what the estimated value is? I guess what I'm getting at is if I'm the BP owner, knowing the village wants to do something in that area, my price is going up, right? So we're not going into a position where we're going to have to overpay just because we're trying to push this, you know, these plans forward. So do we have appraised values on these properties that are a guideline for what we're negotiating with them on? And two, I assume the values you used in here are not going to be what where we finally end up. And because I'm assuming again, that if we're telling them what we're offering, you know, their price is going up again. So again, I assume that's not what you're using, but that's my first question. Second question on BEP is the environmental side of it. whose responsibility is it going to be to clean up the gas station if we were to acquire it? And B, if there are environmental issues that are identified after the acquisition, is that going to be the village's responsibility as well?
Okay, we'll start with the first question. There has not been formal appraisals done, but there's been market comparisons of similar properties that have arrived at a reasonable price for the properties. And that's how we've backed into those purchase price. What has been sold similar to those properties, but not a formal outside appraisal coming in. As far as the environmental cleanup, there are some environmental contamination on the BP that actually goes over to the BMO site. We do have a phase 1 and a proposal to get a phase 2. Without control of the property, a phase 2 cannot be done. But we do have an estimate of what we think those potential costs could be, understanding what we think is there. The owners of those sites will not be cleaning those up, but those cleanup costs are assumed within these projections. There are also a lot of grants available for helping assist with cleanup opportunities. And having a village or a municipality has a lot different opportunities at grant cleanups than even an owner does. So we're also pursuing other grant opportunities with, the DNR, the WEDC, Washington County, and those are all starting, and there's significant money that can be recaptured to clean up those items. Also with providing some of this infrastructure, demolition, those are all costs that could be picked up by some grants.
Mr. Ewert?
In regards to the phase 2, has there been any discussion of that onus, the purchase being put on developers in the project process, or is it just assumed the village is going to front purchase and clean up?
It really hasn't been discussed. I think the largest item with having the village purchase it, it goes back to control and how that land is split up and being able to get that public marketplace in the middle of it. If you put a private developer in the middle of it, it just does not give the residents as much control over what's happening in that area. It's not out of the question, but right now it's all about getting control.
Was there any attempt at that before this process? I guess I'm worried along similar signs of what they're citing here is if this is approved to go forward, the TID's there, and now the financial viability of the TID relies on phase 1 and 2 occurring to 20, I forget what the percent was. And they raise their costs, which would be a pertinent move on their business end as far as acquisition of that land. Where does that put the village?
Well, it's all a negotiation with the developers and the owners. And again, the projections that were put forth today are all very, very conservative.
So there's plenty of room in there if they choose to raise the valuation of their property because they know that you're hamstrung in needing to require them in order to ensure the financial viability of the TID?
Again, it all comes down to the negotiations of what we're able to do and what the village and the residents will end up wanting in that area.
You could see the concern to that though, right?
All we can do is have the best estimates with the knowledge that we have at this point.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Shadid, have any questions? Bill, do you have any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was unmuted. I do. I have a couple comments.
Go ahead, sir.
First of all, from Mr. Ewert, I don't believe we've, or I at least, have heard comments from you on the impact of this whole project on the schools. I believe you are going to generate some numbers, or your organization was. I'm concerned about that. This is one of many projects where we've withheld money from you. I'm not saying that negatively. It was all done above board. Also, I'm really kind of getting worried about how many new projects we put before us. We're even paying several $1 million to upfront buy property for this one. We see some degradation in our physical plant in this village, streets and things like that, money that probably we need. I don't want to be short-sighted, but I really don't want to get us in a situation where we're so cash strapped we can't operate. If the program is good, then I don't understand why we can't see more upfront investment from developers. That's my comments. I'd like some answers on those two things.
That's a question directed, or that's just your
Yeah, other
comments, Bill?
question would be directed to Mr. Ewert for the impact on the schools and on the presenter for the where we stand as far as how much, I guess the village and the presenter, where we stand with investing all this money.
Russ, you want to?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Sure. Mr. Shannon, we sent a resolution to the village board. They entertained that at their last meeting and enacted a motion around that in regards to slowing this down or holding this off until our studies could be done. Our first study, the facilities use study, is in. I think there's a copy in this room. It's about 1,100 pages. So we're working through that. The second study is the enrollment study. I believe the village is set to meet with MD Roffers on the 4th. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think it's next week sometime. And if, is it 3rd? Okay, perfect. So this week. We also have to meet with the village of Richfield, and we are reaching out to Jackson, Polk, and our other municipalities that are involved in the school district boundaries to get an idea of what their developmental plans are to help feed into that study and make it as accurate as possible. I know as far as Richfield and the village of Germantown, they are both on the board with meetings scheduled. Once that's done, it'll roll back into the facilities use studies with PRA with those numbers, and we might get a little adjustment to the PRA presentation and report on what enrollment impact could be. So we're waiting for those studies to be done. One of them is done, and we're waiting for the second to be done and then them to be dovetailed together. So once we have,
advice to me as a commissioner for how I should vote tonight, do you want this to be put aside until you have time to actually present us with good figures? I'm not being critical. I just don't think we've given you enough time.
so the school district's resolution, I'll hold into the first portion of that, and it's been made public that we're looking for a good partnership with the village. But their ask was to place on hold any further actions in regards to this project. I think the village came up with a reasonable response in their motion, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's less around the TID process and more around the RFP process and zoning process. Unfortunately, this board, we do have to take into zoning considerations, right? Would be my understanding.
You would have to create the zoning for the village district. And that would include the zoning for the village center and also what type of development standards that you would bring to the district and also to the village center. So that'll all be part of that zoning package. But right now, that zoning has been put on or the discussion or the creation of it has been put on hiatus until the school board has time to assess their 2 studies and come back with a report.
And that was my understanding of what that motion ended up.
Right. And at that time, you thought it'd be late April, early May. And that's one of the reasons in the previous meeting at the Joint Review Board that Mr. Dahl asked for it, not only because he wanted to, because of the election and have those that are seated at that time to be part of the new village board, but also I think it works within that time frame that was discussed with what the school board had asked for in a delay.
Yep. So ultimately, to answer your question, the village took some action on a delayed method to approach. As far as what this board does with it tonight, my stance would be as far as the type of development that's being proposed here and the ancillary, the district, and I agree with the funding scenario that was presented, and I don't think we've ever disagreed with that. Our situation is that adding more rental residential to an area that's already highly impacted by residential rental units creates a ebb and flow influx that is difficult to manage appropriate staffing levels and appropriate experience levels within that staffing. And it incurs an expense onto the district outside of what the TID does or doesn't preserve for the school district. It's more of a staff management, a spatial management. Obviously, if we have home ownership residential going in, that's a little more reliable. As far as if the district were to need to expand buildings, because those families tend to live in those for long periods of time, whereas resident or rental units can fluctuate from one year to the next or even mid-year. So if we're looking to plan expansion around something that fluctuates is volatile as enrollment from residential units, that would create a unreliable structure to plan around for a permanent expense that we'd have to eventually ask the taxpayers to shoulder in regards to school expansion.
As far as your enrollment fluctuation, that's happening now in regards to the multifamily that are currently in that area. What needs to be addressed is what does this do in addition to that, or what does it do to increase the number of students specifically to MacArthur Elementary School?
Any rental-based development is going to impact the district in the same way. I mean, if you put it in one of two other elementary zones, it may be absorbable by the current space. This one is in a tipping point where it doesn't take very many students to cause this. We're also not, that discussion isn't just singularly discussed or held to the TID in this case, but also other potential expansions within the district. In general, we're discussing, the thought is that the rental development is going to be an issue that's difficult to plan around for expenditures for the school. Ultimately, you could have, if you build enough or the village leans enough in across the village into rental properties, you could be bringing in an enrollment base that fluctuates to a point where we have to expand schools or potentially expand schools in 1 year, and in a year or two, depending on if they stay within those leases, they may leave and now we don't need that space. And that's a difficult situation for the school district to ask this community and the surrounding communities to support a potential referendum for space expansion. There's a lot of things that play into it. That would be worst case scenario, simply as you guys are presenting here on the financials as what is the bare minimum needed. But that's the point of these studies and the conversations that we're looking to continue to have with the village.
Right. Bill, any other questions?
No, well, other than the impact on the village and its operation, but I want to thank you, Matt. I think that one of the reasons it's good for me to see you on our group is I don't think we've considered this stuff in the past. Not, you guys weren't here, maybe we didn't ask you, I don't know, but you have to be strong with us and keep us pointed the way to take care of a really good school district. We don't want to let it go for some opportunistic program, okay? So as long as you remember that.
I think I agree with you there. I think a strong
I think you
village
do.
makes
Go ahead.
I think a strong school or a strong village makes a strong school district, and vice versa. A strong school district makes a strong village. So we'll continue to work together.
Okay, and then Dean, the thing that I was really worried about is I wonder what are the limits of our ability to keep investing this money?
Is part of the TIF of what
Well,
would need for bonding of the
The
TIF?
village doesn't get tax money either, but we have expenses to run the village. We have infrastructure, streets and roads and traffic control and all that. And we're spending a lot of our money for their development or this and many others. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I just want to know
No,
how
but
comfortable
this
we are that-
particular, in this particular situation of when we're talking about TIF 10,
Right, okay.
that's money that's going out for and being bonded for. It's not coming out of general fund. So it's not part of the yearly budget bill. It comes as part of the borrowing that they've shown in their pro forma for the TIF and for its infrastructure. And then you have the input of the developers who purchased back the land. So it's not coming out of general fund, which affects the roads and the services that you're mentioning. It's more of the development covering its borrowing based on its growth. And
So
the way
that's
that
where-
it pays it back through its increment based off of the taxes it would generate. Much like any other TIF.
So the bonding though is what took care of, that ultimately covers what the cash that we put up front for buying property?
And what we would get from the developer for the sale of those properties, yes.
Okay. I don't feel good about it. That's all there is. I can't make myself feel good about it.
About which part, Bill?
Well, either one, really.
What, the bonding?
I don't, it all looks like to me that it's expenses that the village has out in front of it. If we put out bonds for the money, fine. If the thing's successful, we pay off the bonds and that's fine. I just
Right,
don't
and
want
that's
to
what
see
the pro forma
Germantown.
shows that Ayers has laid out for us.
I know, I read it. I hear
Okay,
you.
good.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Jeff?
No, we're ready to go to public hearing. I'd ask for people who want to speak to prepare a speaker request form, copies of which were in the little box back by the entryway. When you come forward,
Four, I think.
when you're recognized and come forward by the chairman, please hand your slip to Jordan or myself here before speaking from the podium. And when you get to the podium, please turn the microphone on, or we'll turn it on. State your name and address. There is a 3-minute time limit, and I'd ask you to, as is standard procedure, direct your comments to the chair.
Okay. Then we will open this public hearing by hereby stating, a notice is hereby given, that the Plan Commission of the Village of Germantown will hold a public hearing on March 31st at 6:30 PM at or about. The meeting will be held at the Germantown Village Hall located on Mequon Road in Germantown. Any member of the body and/or citizen may attend the meeting virtually through WebEx platform, giving the password and the call-in number. The hearing will be held to provide the public a reasonable opportunity to comment on the proposed creation of a tax incremental district number 10, its proposed boundaries, and its proposed project plan. The district proposed boundary is identified on the map included in this notice. Based on the existing condition of properties within the proposed district boundary, the village expects to designate the district as in need of rehabilitation or conservation. Projects to be undertaken within the district and costs to be incurred, which are the project costs, will be for the purpose of rehabilitating or conserving property and may include acquisition of property, right-of-way easements, site preparation, installation, or rehabilitation of utilities and streets, payment of cash grants as development incentives to owners, lessees, or developers of land located within the district, professional services and/or organizational costs, administrative costs, financing costs, and other costs that may be necessary to implement the district's project plan. Projects may be undertaken within the district's proposed boundary and in areas located in the village within 1/2 mile of that boundary. All interested parties will be given a reasonable opportunity to comment on the proposed creation of the district, its proposed boundaries, and its proposed project plan. A copy of the proposed district project plan, including a description of the proposed boundaries, is available for public inspection and will be provided on request during normal business hours at the Village of Clerk in desk in Germantown Village Hall located on Mequon Road. So with that, then we would open this public hearing for anyone that wishes to come forward to speak for or against the creation of TIF number 10.
I'm going to ask you to be patient. I had a serious accident this week and smashed my whole face, and I have just had my eyes dilated before I got here, and this was written out, and I'm trying to focus, so I just want to get through it.
All right, sorry for your accident, but
But
thank you for coming through it.
most of us here don't understand and absorb everything that's told tonight. But what has been told is most of the residents do not want rental properties. They do not want TIDs. And I did a research on 52 TIDs across the country. The biggest one in California They stopped doing them because all the extra costs involved were passed on to the taxpayers. And Trustee Baumel says I'm not informed, and I'm not as informed as he is, but I make calls. I called the MacGyver Institute this week. I called Senator Ron Johnson. I called President Trump. I talked to other people involved in running our government and getting their opinion. They read our reviews on what our meetings are all about. And they're, first of all, a TID, the whole premise of a TID is the original base of the cost will rise when it's ended, okay? What if it doesn't? Who's going to absorb the cost of that? This is not a $2 million project. This is going to last a long time. And most TIDs shouldn't last that long because the economy right now is down 26%. Over 20 big merchandising stores are closing. Walgreens is closing 2,000 stores across the country. Not only them, but other big stores. That's going to affect the economy. And TIFs are called from unfranchised taxpayers, so whoever's going to build them, and they're used to benefit only the property owners within the TID district. The taxpayers are, it's really what you call without representation. And I'm trying to see this. Public officials, unless they have a say in how the money is spent in that TID, there could be problems. There have been foreclosures where the costs are passed on to you, the taxpayer. There's so much assumptions here that it's way beyond what is available. And it does adversely affect school districts, and it hurts our general fund because when there's extra costs, right now they're talking demolition of this, demolition of that. I talked to the vice president of real estate investment at BMO. They're not interested, not right now. And I talked to the owner of BP. Not the man that runs it, but the owner. And he's only interested under certain circumstances, which means if you don't have people that know how to negotiate, and based on what the people I called saw, we don't have good negotiators right now. And it could cost us millions of dollars. I don't care what anybody says. I'm looking at the negatives, okay? And who pays the increase? And we don't need any more apartments. This town has only grown 0.22%. That's not a lot to warrant a $70 million project. And so all I'm saying is I think we should sit on this. And I think that whoever's in charge of this, like our board, and it was also said that thank you, that the board we have, they don't feel that the wisdom is there to spearhead this project with the money and the time it's going to take. Most of us, I won't even be alive when this TID ends. And my property, what's going to happen?
Are you wrapping it up, Ms.?
So,
Ms.
okay,
Benders?
then I appreciate your patience with me, really.
I appreciate you coming.
So please.
Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward to speak for or against the creation of TID number 10?
Russell said that he doesn't have to listen to that come at every meeting, but
Oh, Ms.
well, that's only well,
Ms. Benders. Ms. Benders, Ms. Benders. That's fine. You're very passionate. I understand. Thank you. What are we talking about?
There was a slide in the joint review board packet that was not presented that I wanted up on the screen for the audience to be able to see. And he indicated that he couldn't pull it up. So I will pull up a picture on my phone and quote some numbers.
Talking about the 1/2 mile radius?
Nope, it is section 17, the revenue taxing entities and the money that they will forego during a TID. But anyways, we'll go ahead and start with my comments and I will get to those numbers. First of all, Trustee Baum needs to recuse himself. He said that his relationship with Gray Wolf has ended. If you look at public records, according to the county records, we now have 2 mortgages with Gray Wolf Partners, one for $550,000 on that 1 acre parcel and one for $655,000. So you should not be sitting on this panel because we still have a financial obligation to Gray Wolf. And in the interest of transparency, it would be helpful if you could share with the public what your compensation has been on this and what makes you think that your conflict has ended. So we'll let the public decide when it comes to the vote whether you should be sitting there, but I really don't think you should. One slide, they really kind of glossed over it. Joint Review Board had a packet tonight of information. Most of the slides were not presented. And there is a slide that really paints a picture there. The last slide in the packet shows, it lists Washington County, the Village of Germantown, the school district, and MATC. And it has it broken down as to, you know, when they talk about, oh, the businesses and the increase in value, they'll be paying the cost on this. No, they won't. Yes, they pay taxes, but note that you're foregoing. The school district is losing out on $16,263,000 of tax revenue if there was not a TID. The Village of Germantown, $10,511,000. MATC, 1.6 million. Washington County, 3.12. When you start to look at it in those numbers and what the real impact is, no, it isn't the money coming directly out of your pocket at the minute. But when it comes to talking about money for roads and things like that, and that money now being tied up for the 27 years, I also think the TID boundary. We had the Joint Review Board with Mr. Sedgwick sitting on it. You should be asking yourself, why is that TID boundary going around Walgreens? You need to have contiguous land in order to be able to extend the TID boundary. They've said it in another meeting. They want to extend the TID all the way down Main Street to Blackstone because that encompasses the Village Center District. They've talked about the financing being premised, and Mr. Walter even said it tonight, that Ehlers is the baseline minimum. Well, the baseline minimum of this presentation was 5 stories, 4 stories, and that would be available to that entire district. And so Mr. Sedgwick has a development that he wants to do, and he's already said he wanted a TID. So you better be prepared then to see this TID go all the way down Main Street, because that's what is happening. And I could go and say other things that are troublesome about this, but we're 10 years off until there's retail. I would like to see this panel here say, no, we're going to feel pain either way. The board has backed you into a corner here. They had the slide of what the consequences were of not going forward with the TID. I guess maybe we should pause then, since we're going to have consequences no matter what, and not move the TID forward. Then hopefully we'll have new board members who can sort through this and maybe try and minimize the pain for the community.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against TID number 10? Hi, Charlie. How you been? Good to see you. Oops, happens. Thank you. Got it, yep.
Is on. Charles Hargan, West 169 North 11504 Biscayne Drive. I would just like to mention in the pictures that were shown, there's awfully big buildings in there. And I don't know if, since I was on the board, I don't know if the plan commission and the board has voted no more than 3 stories high. But that's the code right now is 3-story high buildings. And well, you are all appointed and elected to watch out for the village, and we don't want to be just any village USA, we want to be Germantown, USA. And I appreciate your attempts, but I kind of think this is an overblown project. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward, Charlie. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for public hearing to speak for or against TID number 10?
Hi, my name is Stephen Wazalowski, and my address is West 169 North 10427 Pheasant Run. I live in the Old Farm subdivision, and I've been there for 38 years. I'm also a member of our Utility Advisory Board, and I thank Dean for letting me be a member of that board. Appreciate that.
Nice job, Steve.
I guess I'm a little saddened because when I look at this development now, when I sat in some of the visioning sessions, we talked about there were a lot of young couples that came with kids and stuff, and they talked about bringing everybody together at the corner. That, you know, you're going to have My Fest there, you're going to have cookouts, you're going to have just fun. You got the tent set up and all this stuff. That's the last part of this development. If it happens, but we're trying to ramp through 446 apartment units right now. That's what you want to do. I'm not for apartments. Don't want them here. So I'm sad, and you made your presentations through these visioning sessions, like, hey, we're going to have this group get together for the kids and everybody. What am I supposed to do? Take my grandkids in 3 years down to the BP gas station, get them a can of soda, a bag of chips, and then we sit out and smell gas fumes in the parking lot? Come on. Let's do the important development first. We want to bring something for the village together. We don't want the apartments. That just doesn't seem right there. And then I guess, Dean, I got a question for you. I saw today coming here, I didn't get to see all of them. You got a lot of different ads out there. You're walking around at the Flower Source about voting for you. You got things. You got one thing at the Flower Source. You mentioned that you talk about, we don't want, where's everybody talking about 5-story apartments? I just saw a slide tonight that's got 5- and 4-story apartment buildings on it, Dean. You're telling us that wasn't true. I just saw the slides tonight. Okay, so you're not telling the whole story there in your little talk. Then you're walking on the golf course. You're walking around a lot of places, and you look pretty nervous. But one last thing that people here don't know, and I get irritated by this. In 2022, we were chasing this gold coin up here, and that gold coin was the Richfield selling them water, sewer, their development. Well, their Amazon people have pulled out. That development's fallen through for now. Don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if there's a time duration where we can get out of that deal and not worry about it. The village has spent a lot of money on all the engineering for the sewer and water there. The manpower, the bills we've incurred. Guess what? We've never billed Richfield for any of that. And I've sat at village board meetings, and we've asked the village president, not the village, but our administrator, are you keeping track of these costs? What's going on? How are we going to get these dollars? It's all blown off. It's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars that Richfield owes us now that we should collect. But now we've moved on to this other shiny coin up here, which is this new development. I don't want to take the kids down to the gas station and smell gas fumes. I'd like to see the corner get built first. And right now, as Trump would say, we're not holding the cards. The gas station and the owner of the BMO properties are holding the cards, and we can't go further. Thank you.
For coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against TID number 10?
I put my notes on the back, so I'll give it to you after I'm done here. I promise. I pinky swear, really. For Doug Lohman, W180N9881, Rivers Bend Circle West. Don't know why I have to say Circle West. It's a very small circle. But anyways, I want to start off by saying that generally I approve of TIDs. I'll share a little anecdote about that. When I was living in Las Vegas, my roommate, my condo, he was a cattle rancher in Montana, and he spent 12 to 16 days a year at his place down in Las Vegas. And he said to me, I can run my business without government subsidies. No problem. I cannot run my business without government subsidies when my competitors are using government subsidies. And that's sort of my thought on TIDs. Everybody else is using it. I'm generally in favor of them. This particular one, though, I think most of you will agree that I'm just slightly a little bit more than just a casual observer of village government. I'm not nearly as good as some other people in this room, but I do keep my eye on it somewhat. It appears real suspicious to me. It seems to come out of a lot of closed meetings that a lot of people have complained about, that things have just gone on and, basically, well, okay, we heard you, we're still going to have closed meetings, which is a curious thing in my mind, simply because represent us. That's the curious thing comes to me. In the presentation, there was a lot of the village is responsible for ... And then we hope ... Don't be putting things in hope. Hope doesn't cut it. There's 24 years in the Navy and 10 years of government contracting after it taught me that there's a fundamental element about government. And that is that government has to spend every single cent that it gets. No doubt about it, has to be done. Those who succeed in government, those who come up in successfully, creatively, efficiently, come up with creative new ways of getting more money. And that's the whole thing about government. It's simple in a nutshell. That's all government really does. Give me money, let me go spend it. And I really see a lot of that here on this. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you listening to me. Oh,
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward to speak for or against the creation of TID 10? Sure.
Hi, my name is Mike Foley. We live on Blackstone Circle, W177 and 11418. I'm not sure that I'm here to talk either for or against, but I'd like to throw a couple of questions out. As a 30-year resident of the area, but only 4-year resident of Germantown, I was really hoping that one of you folks that have been here forever was going to bring this up. But as a retired engineer, I'm looking at the plans that were presented more last meeting than this meeting and showing parking. If we've got 300 units in just phase one, that's 300 to 600 cars that the residents have to put someplace. Then there was also the mention of the term guest parking that was brought up last time. And looking at the top down, there weren't 400 plus spaces of parking. One of the things in conversation that I've heard from folks that have lived here much longer is, I believe it was the Gables, and I believe it was also Blackstone subdivision, that they had to do blasting to get through the rock. If we've got to go down a long way underneath those 4 or 5-story buildings to do parking, who ends up paying for that if it wasn't part of the due diligence? So I guess the question is, was parking considered as maybe a potential really big expense? And secondly, traffic. We're talking about, I think, the busiest intersection in Germantown. Has anybody looked at what happens when we put, 300, 600 more people, families, school buses, et cetera, through that intersection? So if those could just be addressed by the folks here, or if it's just something that can be considered going forward, I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward to speak for or against the creation of TID 10?
I'm Jeff Brown, N140 W18316 Cedar Lane. I think you need to get more input on 2050 plan because I was there and a lot of people that I know are there, and I don't remember anybody, I mean nobody, asking for high density housing. Nobody. These are real dollars and there's lots of unknowns in the plan. We as people in the audience couldn't see the plan because it was really, really, really small. And we didn't spend all the time to go online and look at it. But there's a lot of unknowns, like $2.1 million above the land purchase cost is what you put as an input in your plan. Really? A lot of developments that I've had to look at on a bank funding perspective, that's not accurate. There's a good chance that $5 million building, you're going to sell it to the developer for $3 million, just so they do the project. It's highly unlikely that you're accurate on that cost. $6 million in theoretical grants is part of the plan. Bob Williams, I don't know you, but you caught that. That's awesome. And highly unlikely that you're going to come up with $6 million of grants. Why is the plan $49 million? All costs, phase 1 and 2, look like $26 million. Why would you set it up for double? It does seem fishy. Seems like something's going to grow into this plan that wasn't presented tonight. If this is a great project, the developers don't need $50 million that we have to finance and back through bonds. Some of you have forgot what fiduciary responsibility is. I think some of you have asked great questions like school issues and actual numbers and if they pass the smell test. I thank you for questioning this half-baked plan. Please vote no on moving this forward.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward to speak for or against the creation of TID 10? Anyone else? Watch that cord.
Shocked by the thing. Okay, good evening. Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. Well, there's so much and 3 minutes isn't enough time. But one, I do have a big problem with no appraisals being received and setting purchase prices on a contract, which was actually signed last year before the visioning sessions. So that's 2 problems. Question about but-for. Today, we don't have standards. We heard that today because we're waiting for the RFP standards. But we were also told that if we want to have high quality development, we need standards which will be done in the RFP. So that means that we don't have them, so we can't have the but-for yet. So I don't think there's a reason to go forward with this at this point. You received a lot of information tonight. And I would ask the commissioners to think about 3 questions. A lot of the other people have mentioned the assumptions. The first question is ask for a list of risks that could possibly derail this. One could be BMO and BP don't want to sell. Another question, what gaps exist in the TID plan? We've heard a few already. No phase 3 estimates. We haven't seen the development agreement draft that was mentioned, so there's one existing. We have an incomplete planning process because they actually didn't take the planning process to fruition. It's about 1/3 of the way done, if it actually gets done more. And we don't have the RFP standards yet. Will we be allowed to participate in designing those? So far, it all seems to be outsourced. The third question is, what is the potential for failure? And a couple of things that come up on that is there could be a recession. There could be, and there is, strong opposition to 5-story buildings, and that the developers propose something that we don't want, which is quite likely. So I believe there are too many questions at this point for this TID to go forward. I do also believe that developers should pay. I don't, especially for housing, all the utilities are there. And as part of the project plan, costs to the school district should be taken into consideration, because it sounds like if you go forward without considering the changes or the additional children in the school system, that there could be additional costs that the village may have to incur if the school district has to add on to their building in that area. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the creation of TID 10?
Scott Effley, W159 and 10514 Old Farm Road, Germantown. A lot of people have spoken already. They haven't taken my thunder, as it were, but you're hearing the same concerns over and over again. And here's my background. I have a degree in finance, and my concentration was risk management insurance. So I know how that works. I know what risk management is. This is a risk management nightmare here. I know that you get the flowery language that says, oh, it's all going to work out. Everything's wonderful. We're conservative. I do financial modeling all the time, and it doesn't always work. Financial modeling is not infallible. You have to make assumptions, sometimes big assumptions. Okay? It might work. It might not work. We could build all these multi-tenant things, and then no matter what anyone says, there's a recession, no one buys them, then what? That's on the taxpayers. Oh, it's on the TID, Mr. Heffley, it's on the TID. Well, the TID leads to us. Everything leads to the taxpayer, okay? It may work, it may not work. Really interesting that the only slide that was missing, I thought was of note, was the half-mile radius, because this village, as of the last 4 years I've been going to meetings, is addicted to expanding TIDs. They expanded the TID down by TID 9. They expanded the TID over by Sterling Pharma. Still don't have a project for that. Now they put up here a big TID boundary that they can extend a half a mile to go all the way down to the Grosnick properties, which the village owns. How convenient is that? How convenient? And we like to expand, so we'll be expanding. But we got to get that boundary across the street. I found it interesting that in the presentation where they said, well, hey, we think Chase should be rehabilitated. Whose opinion was that? Is that an engineer? Is that an architect? We think it is, so we just put it in the boundaries because they might do something. Is that what did you go ask those people if they're going to do something with their property? Did you just assume they are? Did you just throw it in the TID to help make the numbers work? I mean, there's just so many questions here. It's kind of crazy for somebody like me, who, by the way, is a fiduciary and has been one for 27 years. A fiduciary, doing the right thing for people all the time. We talk about risk of failure. The risk of failure, who knows? I hope it works out. We think it'll work out. The gaps, structural deficits. You know what they haven't told you? We had some issues with one of our TIDs. It's called TID 7. They were in arrears. Maybe they're still in arrears. They haven't built what we asked them to. They haven't matched up to the developer's agreement. You know that, okay? So these TIDs don't go perfectly. Right now, at least as of last fall, I don't know what it is right now, TID 7 owes this village money, okay? They're not failing, but they owe us money. So don't tell me that TIDs are just, there's no risk at all, because I don't believe that. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the creation of TID 10? Anyone else? Thank you.
W1679657 Navajo Court. And you asked a question, I'm against it. If this board seems addicted to wanting to throw high-density housing at us, I don't understand. I simply don't understand. And one of these meetings, one of the trustees got all excited about how much revenue was going to come from all this housing. Does that help us? I don't think at any of those meetings I've been to, anybody asked for more high-density housing. Not one person. Yet, what do we get? high-density housing. Anybody here asked for it? I'll bet not. But what are we getting? High-density housing. More traffic, congestion in the schools. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't understand the fixation. Okay, it's really that simple. So no, I'm against it.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the creation of TID 10? Anyone else? We have somebody online that would like to come forward. Ms. Simachowski? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, well, all right. Would
Can
you
you hear
like to
me?
speak?
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments.
Sure.
David Baum had responded to my email, and this is regarding Ascension. I have been there at the Ascension Clinic, and I have a couple of elderly ladies that also have been going there for years. And David did respond by saying that Ascension was offered a space in the new development if they want it. Now, if you've not ever been in the clinic, it's very nice, very spacious, and they do rehab there. And we have 3 over 55 residencies that really do need that clinic in that area. And I think that's why some of them, like the Fairlawn one on Mequon Road, built there because there was the Ascension Clinic right there. But just imagine if it's going to be part of that space, it's going to be tiny. It's going to be a tiny clinic. It's not going to be like what they have now for rehab and to see doctors of all different generalities. The other thing I wanted to mention was, why do we need more retail space? I know it's convenient for the people that would live there to go downstairs and do like maybe grab a sub or something like that. Or a flower shop down there. But I see all these empty retail spaces on County Line Road that are empty. I don't know what's happening with those. I have seen these developments in Sussex where they are literally built up to the sidewalks where you can actually drive by and look in somebody's apartment, which, well, it's up on the second floor, but it's like it takes every little bit of space on that corner that they could squeeze like 500 4-story buildings. They just look out of place. And so I vote against this, and I'm advocating for our community and our elderly and for our children in the school, because my sons went to school at Germantown High from 2004 to 2008. And they said it was so hard to get from the second floor to the first floor and vice versa for their next classes that they were kind of late for some of their classrooms. So I just wanted to put that out there and have you think about that, but I would be against this. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward to speak for or against the creation of TID 10?
Thank you. Tom Barney, N105 W16775 Old Farm Road. Question was asked earlier about enrollment. So the school district is waiting for their enrollment study. Without that, I'll just use an example using information that was in previous planning commission packets, which would put enrollment anywhere between 0.02 and 25 students per 100 units. So that means anywhere between 8 and 100 total students in 400 units. For argument's sake, let's say it's just 60. So not on the low end, not on the high end either. If it's 60 and you're splitting them between the grades, you'd have about 45 that would be at either MacArthur or Kennedy. It was asked earlier if there was a traffic study done. There was, and I thank the administration for sending it to me. But what I didn't see in that study is accounting for an additional 45 cars heading north on Pilgrim to get to either Kennedy or MacArthur, just to turn around 10 minutes later and come back after dropping their kids off in school, and then doing that same thing again in the afternoon after school pickup. So I think I didn't see that in the study, but I think your traffic study needs to be updated to account for a scenario like that. Because that intersection's already pretty busy, and now you're actually doubling, the traffic in some cases, because every car's going through it twice as they go to take their student there and then come home from dropping their student off and then doing it again in the evening. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time to speak for or against the creation of TID 10? See, if you were sitting in front, you'd get right up and you would have beat her. Hi, Charlene. How are you? Good to see you.
Charlene Brady, N109W16620 Hawthorne Drive, Germantown. I sat on this plan commission. I sat on the village board. I sat on the county board. I was involved in TIFs, 3 and 4, maybe, I don't know if any other ones, but 3 and 4 I remember. And those came with risk. But those were just for business, developing our industrial parks. It didn't impact the schools as much. I mean, it did because of the way the tax structures, but they didn't provide additional kids to the schools. We did not do any TIFs for multifamily units, especially high density. We did not do any of those kind of TIFs at all.
That's correct.
And I'm totally against this project. I mean, you are, they said right at the very beginning, it changes the character of your village. I don't know how many of us want the character of our village to change with the large multi-family, multi-unit rental units there on Pilgrim and Magwan Road, with the increased traffic. I don't even want to think of what the traffic on Magwan Road and Pilgrim will be like if you put those additional units in there. I have run on over 99% of all the streets in Germantown. And, I saw this little trail on there. It's nothing. You're talking about this trail that they're going to put up. It is nothing. Why don't we take care of the people that we have in our village right now? Last year, they took out money from the library. They put some of that money back in there this year. Let's take care of the people that we have living here right now. Expand our trail system. Look at our library, but also, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. The people living here deserve, to be taken care of. We don't need to add more people. Let's keep Germantown a really nice place to be. I've traveled around the world since I've left the village board. And what I have found that I like about Germantown is that it is not a tourist town. It's kind of nice to live in a town that's just a town that you enjoy going home to.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time to speak against or for TID number 10? Anyone else?
Tammy Schneider, West 204 and 9699 Lannon Road.
For a minute, I would like to talk about the front row people and how that name has become a negative one. While some of you tonight may not know what I'm talking about, there are some of you, or many of you, who do. I see the front row people as people who are concerned about Germantown, who want their opinions heard. If other residents don't agree with them, then they should get up here and voice their concerns supporting the plans that Germantown is making, instead of calling the front row people names from behind a computer desk. This is a time for all of us to speak. I want to be looked at as a resident of Germantown that cares about Germantown, the same way that any resident should, and the same way that the people on the commission should. With that said, I would like to talk about the TID. People have spoke very well about it.
the vote on this TID should be a no, or at least a postponement. We don't even know what the actual plan is for. There are too many unanswered questions. First, Germantown needs to get a developer to see their proposals. How many housing units will there really be? How many of these units will be rentals, which affects school enrollment due to the fluctuation of student-age children? Next, we don't even know if the two businesses, the BMO and the gas station, will ever vacate those areas. Without those two businesses leaving, there is no market plots or phase two. This will not create a cohesive plan, as was just stated in the slide presentation. Perhaps the market plots area should be moved to the village-owned vacant flower source area, and this area developed first. Developing the retail and restaurant area or the market plots, like was done at Hollander area in Mequon, that was done first. Then, once that's completed, go on to the residential area as phase two. Last, the assumptions of Ehlers for this TID include conservative assumptions that a developer will buy the flower source property from Germantown for $2.1 million. When we don't know that that's true. What if they have to buy it and Germantown takes a loss on that land? It is not necessarily a realistic assumption, and that will throw off all of the current numbers. Also, Ehlers just stated that the TID includes $6 million that they don't know where it will come from. There is no reason to vote on this TID now. It is the same as voting on dreams and desires instead of reality. It is voting on a development that may not be able to come to fruition if BMO and BP stay. There are too many unanswered questions. I ask you to vote no, or at least postpone the vote on this TID until questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that'd like to come forward at this time to speak for or against the creation of TID number 10? Anyone else? Just state your name and your address for the record. That'd be great.
Barco, Daniels Drive. I don't know, you can't answer questions, but can they rezone the schooling district that all the students would not go to MacArthur? They could go to County Line. You know, that's, I don't know if you can answer that or not. At either one? Okay. All right. I'm sorry? Okay. I guess that's my only question.
Okay.
And it's like this woman said, as far as these people go, run for the board. I mean, if you really want to strike it home, well, then don't. I'm just saying, put your name in the hat, run.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time to speak for or against the creation of TID number 10? Anyone else? Then this public hearing is now closed. Thank you all for coming forward and thank you all for submitting. Oh, 1 second. My fault. 1 second. Let's go back before I close. I do have 3 submissions for email that I'd like to read into the record as well, in fairness to the people that submitted them. And the first one reads, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to see where the 2 million came from that paid for the flower source property and land. Where was the referendum? Next, Germantown does not need or can support any more apartments, especially if a low income. We need to respect our small businesses and keep them in their spots. How many of your strip malls or TIFs aren't full and need attention? Work on those, don't create new. Why would this apartment complex not be taxed for so many years as long as you give them a break? I would like my property taxes held off as well. You tend to do this with many apartments, example being on Country Air. Thank you and have a great day and stay safe. And this is signed by Anita. The next one reads, it is unconscionable to think that the village would spend $5 million to purchase and demolish the Germantown Clinic, which has served this community for 25 years. Many doctors who have offices in other areas man this location with their specialties, and it would be a huge loss to hundreds of seniors, families, and those with disabilities. The clinic has a first-rate rehab center serving this community. The building is in excellent condition, and destroying this facility for unimproved plans makes no sense. Further, BMO Harris has no plans to move. What do you expect to do with the BP gas station? I can only imagine the cost to purchase the corner property and remove the underground tanks. Nothing of this magnitude should go forward without a referendum. The untold expenses which would loom for many years and would be an unfair burden to taxpayers, to say nothing of the impact of residential housing, would be on the school district. The loss of tax revenue would be another enormous financial loss to the village. TID should only be treated and created for industrial manufacturing creation. The village has purchased the Grossnick properties over a year ago, paying $1 million, and there is still no apparent plans. There was a proposal for development on County Line Road, and it appears to be at a standstill. Let's get back to maintaining the village as it stands and accelerating the maintenance of our roads rather than spending millions we do not have. And that's from Bobby Seward on Oak Lane in Germantown. The next one reads, hello, how can you plan the boundaries of the TIF when the 2050 plan and the neighborhood meetings haven't been finished? The TID has not been approved yet. We keep hearing it will not cost taxpayers any money, but don't forget the school district, still waiting for the studies to come back. But if they need to expand, then who will pay, the taxpayers or the developers? Once again, putting the horse before the cart. Due to the rush and push of the purchase of the properties for the village center, no one is listening to the residents. Take your time and plan things out for the TIF. No need to rush and push. Will Trustee Ball recuse himself from the planning of the TID since he has been involved in some talks before coming forward to the village board? And we asked President Walter to clarify the area of the TID due to what he has said at previous meetings. He implies that it would be the new village center area. This would be just the two properties in the village that the village purchased and the Ascension Medical Clinic to be purchased later. Corners North and Pilgrim and Mequon Roads, Post Office, Walgreen, and the Sendix Shopping Center. No reply yet. Then this is signed by the Schneiders. The last one that we had read says, I am very upset that $2 million were part of our taxpayers' money to pay for these properties without a referendum vote on this purchase. Dean Walter and his cronies went behind our backs to use our taxpayer money to obtain these properties. My son went to Germantown High School from 2004 to 2008, and the halls were so crowded to get from one class to another via the stairways that they were often late to their next class. Several years ago, there was a referendum to build new schools, but was voted down. Now, however, the village wants to add 940 units to an overcrowded schools. We do not have enough school space for teachers to handle the incoming children to our village. Destroying the Ascension Clinic will be devastating to our community. I personally have gone there and have elderly friends that have doctor appointments there. They have been going there for years. The Gables, Fairland Oaks, and the Virginia Highlands also need this clinic. It's close and accessible for our residents. They would have to go to the Ascension Clinic off the expressway where Ernie von Schledorn used to be. This is such an inconvenience. I'd like that the freighter mammogram vehicle comes to that location to do exams. We will lose that as well. Please do not accept this proposal of tearing down the flower source, the BP gas station, and the Ascension Clinic. I strongly disagree with this decision. It is also not a viable option for our community, but will certainly raise our taxes, which are high enough. Thank God we have the industrial parks here and are coming in and holding down our taxes. And that is signed by Judith Simachowski. Okay, that then takes care of all items on the public hearing. If there's no one else that wishes to come forward to speak for or against, this public hearing will now be closed. Commissioners. We are on to bring up the approval of the district as proposed, meaning the boundaries of the district and the project plan as proposed from Ehlers.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask if there's a motion that it be specific to resolution number 01-2025. That was included in the packet, and if you like, I can read through that.
Yes, please.
What page is that on, Jeff?
Yeah.
I can refer to it in a motion.
Get to it.
We're checking.
So
I'll go ahead and start reading.
Go ahead.
Resolution number 01-2025, a resolution establishing the boundaries of and approving the project plan for tax incremental district number 10. Whereas the village of Germantown, the village has determined that use of tax incremental financing is required to promote development and redevelopment within the village. And whereas tax incremental district number 10, the district, is proposed to be created by the village in accordance with the provisions of Wisconsin statutes, section 66.1105, the tax increment law. And whereas a project plan for the district has been prepared that includes A statement listing the kind, number, and location of all proposed public works or improvements within the district, or to the extent provided in Wisconsin statutes, section 661105, outside of the district. An economic feasibility study, a detailed list of estimated project costs, a description of the methods of financing all estimated project costs and the time when the related costs or monetary obligations are to be incurred, a map showing existing uses and conditions of real property in the district, a map showing proposed improvements and uses in the district, proposed changes of zoning ordinances, master plan, map, building codes, and village ordinances, a list of estimated non-project costs, a statement of the proposed plan for relocation of any persons to be displaced, a statement indicating how the district promotes the orderly development of the village, an opinion of the village attorney or of an attorney retained by the village advising that the plan is complete and complies with Wisconsin statutes, section 66.1105. And whereas prior to its publication, a copy of the notice of public hearing was sent to the chief executive officers of Washington County, the Germantown School District, and the Milwaukee Area Technical College District, and any other entities having the power to levy taxes on property located within the district in accordance with the procedures specified in the tax increment law. And whereas prior to its publication, a copy of the notice of public hearing was also sent to the owners of all property in the proposed district. And whereas in accordance with the procedures specified in the tax increment law, the Planning Commission on March 31, 2025, held a public hearing concerning the proposed creation of the district, its proposed boundaries, and its proposed project plan, providing interested parties a reasonable opportunity to express their views thereon. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Plan Commission of the Village of Germantown that, one, it recommends to the village board that tax incremental district number 10 be created with the boundaries as designated in Exhibit A of this resolution. Two, it approves and adopts the project plan for the district attached as Exhibit B and recommends its approval to the village board. And three, creation of the district promotes orderly development in the village. Adopted this day of March 31st, 2025. In signatures for spots for Dean Walter, Village President and Plan Commission Chair, and the Secretary of the Plan Commission. Gordon, did you find the page number for that?
52 it is. 52 and 53.
Can I get a point of order for clarification? And it's a legitimate clarification that I need here. Is this meeting occurring in accordance to the joint review board or any action that's taken within this meeting? Was it required to have the joint review board before this meeting?
There's an organizational meeting, yes.
Okay. So if this board is going to take action on it, I have some concerns around the process of the joint review board. State statute states public member and board chairperson shall be selected by the majority of the other board members at the time of the board's first meeting. That didn't take place this evening. State statute also states that joint review boards are unique to each TID or TIF district and shall be formed in regards to the life of that TID, which also didn't take place at that joint review board. So if this committee or chair or commission is looking to take action based off of actions that took place or the fact that the joint review board was held in accordance to the law, I would be in great concern that that's the case.
I would require the village attorney's input on that.
Yeah, I would say though that with regard to the JRB and their holding of their meeting and their procedures, that's beyond the purview of the Plan Commission.
So that's why I asked for the clarification that was any action resulting from this required to occur after the joint review board. And if they've met and didn't comply with state statutes, is any action that they took or any action that would come from this be a scenario like fruit from poisonous trees because that board didn't meet in compliance with state statute?
Village administrator.
The joint review board did meet this afternoon at 5:30. The agenda, which was reviewed by the village attorney and is consistent with other agendas that we have prepared for previous joint review board meetings, stated that the at-large representative and the chair would be selected as needed. There was a motion to replace the at-large member and to replace the chair. Those motions failed for lack of a second. The meeting, the joint review board did complete their meeting and conduct their business. If there's questions about that, those are things that could be addressed to the village attorney at a later date. But as far as I have knowledge, and I think anyone in the room has knowledge, that complies with all components of the state statute, and this body is free to move forward.
I don't know if anyone in the room would agree with that, or everyone in the room would agree with that.
Agree with it. I don't think.
But state statute is requiring that each TID district joint review board is unique to that board or to that TID.
Neither one of us are lawyers, and it doesn't pay for us to argue back and forth about that.
Sure, but what I'm saying is this board has, or the village board has had a history in regards to this process of operating what we had meant versus the scenarios that were legally binding, which has already caused them to hold secondary meetings to reaffirm processes. And I would hate for this board to take, or this commission to take action if it's based off of something that may be of a legal question.
If that were to happen, we would redo this meeting at a future date. If there was a decision or determination that the joint review board meeting did not occur in a legal manner, we would reschedule this and redo this.
During that meeting, did they select a chairperson and a public member?
Yes.
They held a vote to select those two people?
No.
So then they didn't select those?
Yes, they did.
At what point did they select those in that meeting?
Again, Mr. President, I don't know if you want me to engage in an argument. Again, neither one of us are lawyers
It's
here.
an endless argument without the village attorney here.
I'm just airing a concern. Proceed with the business as you need to see fit.
You're, as sitting at this dais, you have every right to air all your concerns. Anything else?
Thank you.
Trustee Baum.
Can I make a motion now?
Yes.
Ready? I make a motion to approve resolution establishing the boundaries of, of and approving the project plan for tax incremental district number 10. That is resolution number 01-2025 as presented.
Motion made. Do we have a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Baum.
So I've listened to everybody here. I have spoken many times on social media that we clearly do not have all the information. We need the information to make decisions. I can't get the information unless I move this forward to get a developer to the table, to refine the entire TIF program, to know how many units are actually going to be built, to know how many parking stalls are going to be included, to know how big the market plots is going to be, whether it's 150 or 60 by 60. I need to get the information, and unless I have a developer and go through the RFP, I can't get an RFP unless I have guidelines. I can't do the guidelines unless we start having discussions. I need things to move forward before I can give all the information that everybody's asking for. So I want this to move forward.
Further discussion, no input from the audience. You had your chance at public comment. You had your chance at public comment. You had your chance at the public hearing. I cannot entertain your comments from the audience. It is now up to the dais. Further discussion.
Mr. President. I did want to make a couple of comments that I think did not come up yet.
Sure.
In the previous discussion, that I feel as a village administrator, I have an obligation to make sure that the plan commission members understand. There was a lot of discussion, questions, comments related to what happens if the TID is created. There was not much question, there were not questions or discussion related to what happens if the TID is not created. I think it's important that the Plan Commission have that information as well. The village has committed to purchasing 3 parcels in the Pilgrim Mequon area. Those are legally binding commitments. 2 of the parcels have been closed. The 3rd one is scheduled to be closed on June 30th. Total cost of those is $7.4 million. The village will have to finance the cost of the acquisition of those parcels. There's 2 ways that we can finance that. One is issuing debt where the debt service is paid for through the tax increment district. And there's potential for resale for revenues coming forward to the tax increment district. The other is to move forward and try to develop the land without a tax increment district. In that case, the costs related to the project, including the land acquisition, will be funded through levy supported debt. So what that would mean is any debt service on bonds that are issued will go onto the property tax bills of the residents, probably starting in the property tax bills that go out this fall. So, you know, it's not a choice of nothing happening or the TID happening. There are 2 choices at this point to go forward with.
Further discussion? Mr. Williams?
Just so it's clear to me, what 26% of the revenue that's assumed in here is either based on an assumption of 2% growth per year for the next 27 years or $6 million of getting revenue from somewhere. If by some chance this did fall short at some point, where does the shortfall go? Is it the same thing? It goes to the levy to the taxpayers?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, just to clarify further on the 2% growth, there's 2 factors that I think Mr. Cameron from Ehlers kind of laid out that offset each other. 2 assumptions, one that affects the TID negatively and one that affects the TID positively. So they made the assumption that there's a 2% appreciation that affects the TID positively. They also made the assumption that the tax rate declines each year, as you pointed out.
And I'm letting you know that I ran the assumption that neither of them happened. Okay, that the tax rate remains the same and there's no growth. The revenue's $5.4 million less or 21% less, assuming that the tax rate remains the same with no appreciation. So regardless of one going up and one going down, the net impact of those 2 assumptions together generates $5.4 million of revenue under strictly an assumption that we're going to have 2% growth every year for 27 years. So I just want to understand if that doesn't happen and or if the $6 million of revenue that is just plugged in under the hope or premise that we're going to get a grant doesn't happen, where does the shortfall come from?
The first option that the village would have, excuse me, if there is a shortfall, would be to transfer excess funds from other tax increment districts. So currently, we have 3 tax increment districts that have surpluses, 6, 7, and 8. The village would have the option of moving surpluses from those other tax increment districts to a tax increment district that is struggling. That would be the first option in that case.
Okay, I'm not indicating whether I'm for or against it. I'm not indicating whether I'm for or against it.
There you go.
I'm just asking what happens if those 2 assumptions don't take place.
Okay.
Thanks.
Further discussion? Trustee Ball?
All the assumptions that I keep hearing about from.
Mike?
Thank you. It's all the assumptions that I keep hearing about that are driving me nuts on this project. Until I get all the information in front of me, there's a lot of assumptions, but until we get all the pieces put together, put in front of us for a final presentation, that's when we actually decide, do we move forward with this or not? Right now, it's all premature to say, yes, we're going forward with this. We're going to borrow all this money. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. No, there are many other stopping blocks in front of us that can stop us at any point. But without having the information, you don't know what's happening.
This meeting is not a make or breaker. What this meeting does is it gives either a positive or no recommendation to the village board, and they then decide what they should do if they want to vote in favor of the TID or not. And what that does, if they vote not in favor, then they tell their designee of whoever that is for the joint review board that they're to vote no. The school board does the same thing. It comes before the school board and they decide based on the information that they've been presented to tell their designee, which tonight was Dr. Reuter, how they should vote. County does the same thing and MATC does the same thing. So each board that has a representation of a taxing district tells their representation, this is how we want you to vote. And then at that final joint review board, when all those bodies come back together, that's when the TID is real or it's not, based on how each of the different boards tell their designee to vote. So tonight's motion, our recommendation from Plan Commission is to the village board, and then they tell their designee. So it's not a make or break tonight. The make or break comes as each board decides to tell their representative yes or no. And then at that final meeting, which now is scheduled for May 12th, that's when it becomes real, as a yes or no.
If we, no matter how we vote, when it goes to the board, they're gonna have this whole meeting over again.
Yes, they are.
And they're gonna vote. And that's gonna be
No, that's going to be what their designee says at the joint review board meeting on May 12th.
So if everybody said no tonight and the village board says yes on May 12th,
Mm-hmm.
then it carries on.
Well, when the village board would say, what meeting would that be at, Jeff?
But Mr. President, the plan commission approval is required.
Okay.
So if the plan commission would vote no, the TID would not continue to move.
Oh, okay. My misunderstanding. Usually we're a recommending body.
Can I interject?
Sure.
Just given the information that you were providing the voting members here, as the joint review board being the final backstop to the approval process,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree with that. That is, I think why some of the motions that were made tonight at that, and while they didn't get a second, and then no vote took place to put in a chair or public member, were concerns around the village chairing a board, a governing board, when they're the ones asking for it. I think the school district was looking for an impartial, and why they didn't and shouldn't nominate themselves is because they obviously have an opinion that's directly related to this. So they were looking to have the county chair that board as a more impartial person. The other is the public member. And with the current open ethics complaint investigation going on in regards to that member and that vote, I think that meeting took place last week. There's huge concerns given that this TID can very well feasibly be extended down to an area in which he's already presented documents to the village board. You can shake your head at that, but that has occurred. He has provided documentation to the village board where he has mentioned the preference for a TID process in his development. So that is a concern. I'm not saying all those allegations, he's interrupting. I'm not saying all those allegations are 100% accurate. What I'm saying is those are the concerns. So when Mr. Baum says he's strained by all of the assumptions from the members of this community, that's your job as an elected official, to be strained by their opinion of your process. And quite frankly, the process hasn't held the weight. It's not passing the litmus test. And we continue to run into those situations where it doesn't pass it.
It's true.
So when we say, whatever decision you make, it's not final, don't worry, this other board is, there's real concerns around the construction of that, the membership of that board. And those weren't handled at that meeting tonight. So when you utilize that as don't worry, just continue on. We need more information. And I agree, we need more information. We don't have all the information. But I suspect once we have all the information, the conversation will be, well, we're too far down the road to do anything else. We have already heard the threat of, we have $7 million worth of
That's not a threat.
village dollars. But no, it's not a threat. It's a real consideration these members have to take in regards to which way they vote. But now they're being asked to weigh that $7 million versus the process that's taken place before them. That's not inconsequential. Not for these residents, not for myself, not for the members of this village, and not for the members of the villages that surround this that I represent in the school district.
Further discussion?
Mr. President.
Village
If I could
Administrator.
Address the issue of Mr. Sedgwick's participation in the Joint Review Board meeting today. I did review that with the village attorney, given the ethics complaint that was filed and has yet to be investigated. The village attorney's opinion was that if the TID were being extended down to affect the Blackstone Creek proposed development, that in that case, that Mr. Sedgwick could not participate in the Joint Review Board meeting. But since that's only speculative and the TID does not address any of Mr. Sedgwick's proposals or developments directly, he could participate in the Joint Review Board meeting.
Further discussion? Bill, got anything? Mr. Shatta, do you have any discussion?
No, I already made my comments known.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Williams?
So I want to be clear. I understand if I'm not completely against the project. I just think there's way too many. I'll call them, we can call them assumptions, but I guess the $6 million of revenue that we need to have in there in order to make the plan work, to me, really isn't an assumption. An assumption would be, we think we're going to get the $6 million from here. And this is how we're going to do it. That would be an assumption. Saying we put it in there because we need it in there is not, to me, an assumption. So there's too many unknowns. But if we vote, if this board or the plan commission votes against it, the whole project, the whole TIF is dead, or there's opportunities to find out this additional information in order to move it forward.
If it is voted down, the process stops at this point.
If you want more information, you can make a motion to postpone or table until a certain date. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, is additional information, or wait until, if the big weight in the room is after the election, it's understandable. It's tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we have some room to postpone for a period of time.
You could postpone this within the timeline that's been established. There's a plan commission meeting scheduled for April 14th. It's not scheduled to be before the village board until April 21st.
Okay.
Is there that has to be 14 days in between. So that would push back the date. We'd have to reschedule the joint review board meeting, but you could postpone it if there are questions that you are postponing it for, that we can provide the answers within that time period.
Is it possible to get more detailed information on where we think that $6 million is going to come from, and also the $5.4 million estimated generation of revenue that's coming strictly from an assumption that revenues or that property values are going to increase 2% every year for 27 years? Can you give me some historical information that would support that that's a reasonable assumption? I mean, when we're talking about 11.5 million of $43 million of estimated revenue, so 26% of the revenue we believe is going to be used to pay these expenses that are coming from either A, an assumption, or B, we don't know where it's coming from. Those are the only two things I'm looking for. Are we able to get historical premise to support 2% every year growth for 27 years? And B, are we able to identify where that $6 million is going to come from to fill the hole in the plan?
I think that's more detailed information we can give to, analysis to support the 2% assumption, as I'm looking at Mr. Cameron, as well as some more detail about where that $6 million would come from. There are some thoughts, but we could put some things down on paper to
Just a question, are we able to move it forward with the condition that we get that information?
You could, or you could
You could
postpone it until you get that information. And like you said, it still works within the schedule of what the plan commission meeting would be until the next village board meeting. All it would do is push back the joint review back to, beyond what is now scheduled as May 12th. So that is possible, and it doesn't, it's available if so needed or so requested. And it passes a vote.
I could just add to that. There's 14 days between plan commission and village board action. So you would need to move the village board action back off of April 21st.
Okay.
You could still potentially keep the joint review board meeting that you've got established for May 12th, depending on when the next, when your first meeting
May
in May
5th,
is.
so the board meeting would
you'd
be
be
May
fine.
5th. So that would.
Okay.
There's a 5-day notice
All right.
requirement for the final JRB meeting.
Thank you for clarifying. Trustee Baum.
However, Ms. Copeland, you can't get a developer to get information from a developer. You can't get zoning guidelines. You can't get any idea of what these people are going to pay. So the revenue, the $2.1 million that we're going to sell the property for, you can't confirm that until you bring a developer in, which is after we get the school studies from Roffers.
Which would be, they didn't think it would be until early May. I mean, I've heard late April, I've heard early May. I think it's going to be early May.
So you're not.
Yeah, probably being pushed to early May, given the time frame that different villages can meet with Roffers to provide the information they're asking.
Okay.
So to push it off 2 weeks to get to this next meeting, which we still need 2 weeks between the village board, I'm not going to have that information. I'm not going to have this information. You may get me some financial information, but I'm still missing a whole lot of stuff.
But you needed to move it forward off of the plan commission, and the plan commission members are expressing they want to see that in order to cast their vote to go forward. That's not unreasonable.
I understand that. So, but I'm just saying that when do you have this meeting? If we can push it off.
Just gonna have the same answers as today.
Yeah, you're not going to get all the information that we're looking for at this next meeting. So if I postpone it till when? So that we have all this information, so that we can truly respond to it, so that you have all your information. You know what the school's going to do. You know what the developer's going to do. You know what a TIF can actually do. We know whether this is affordable or not. How or when do we push this? Where do we postpone it to is what I'm trying to understand. I'll be happy to make that motion, but what date do you want me to put on here?
Well, we can respond to Mr. Williams' information by the next meeting. And we could respond to that, I think, within a few days, most likely. But Trustee Baum is correct. A lot of the things that came up are this is a long process, and, it's going to take months to go through zoning changes, to go through RFPs with developers, to negotiate a development agreement. Those are all things, this is one step in the process. Those are all other components of the entire process. And that is a process that's going to take months. And it's, to some extent, one thing is built on the next. And, without moving forward with one piece of it, you don't get the answers to the other pieces of it. So some questions we can't answer, and we'll answer what we can within a couple of weeks, but we won't be able to answer all of the questions that came up.
Understand. And I'm also taking into account the analysis, which says that at the end of the period of time, we're going to have $6.9 million of cumulative benefit. So if we don't sell the property for 2.1 million more than we pay, we're still positive. If we don't come up with $6 million of revenue from, we don't even know what source yet, we're pretty much break even. And if that other assumption doesn't come true at another 5.4, we're negative. So the 2.1 million, I can live with that assumption, because even if that doesn't come through, we're still going to be okay. The 11.5, if those two don't come through, 6 million of it not even being an assumption, being we got to get it from somewhere, we're break even at best. So, I mean, when I look at all the variables in the analysis, I'm factoring in, I'm factoring materiality. 2.1 to me overall doesn't seem as material as 11.5. So, that's just why my questions are focused on those two areas.
I ultimately want the project to happen, but if it takes pausing it or delaying the vote to have it turn out so that Mr. Williams feels better and everybody's stomach feels better. Voting on it, that's what my gut's telling me. I don't know the date of where it would encompass everybody's questions being answered by the study and the financial stuff. But I just think with the duration of the project, I live here, I'm going to live here for a long time. A few months doesn't bother me on it starting, but I also don't know the ramifications of what it does to the village as far as the holding costs of having the parcels, and I don't want to delay it to where it never comes to fruition, but I think I have questions too. So I think holding or making a motion to postpone it without knowing what date to postpone it to.
So that's your motion based on a date that can be provided? You'd make a motion to postpone? Yes, there is, but we could make a motion to postpone with that original motion to approve.
I will make a motion to postpone until April 14th, the first plan commission in April. And that'll give you 2 weeks to figure out information and then we'll decide what we do at that point. So that's my motion.
Motion needs a second. Motion made and seconded by Mr. Williams. Discussion on the motion to postpone.
Your thing doesn't come till May, right?
The initial target was the end of the month, in April, but May is a realistic.
When will you have time to read your 1,100 page one that you currently have?
Already started.
Reading it now.
The faster this meeting gets done, the sooner I can continue that process.
So when would you be able to share any of that with us?
I think they'll present a report, correct?
The goal is for the superintendent and myself to come forward with a report of the standing of the district for you guys to weigh with other facts that you need to make your decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to say
13th?
Yeah, I would have loved to say last month so we could have avoided a lot of this, but
That's fine.
we're doing it as fast as we can, but unfortunately we can't rush good work.
Right, and the village board has agreed to give that time so that it can be discerned correctly and produced in a report that's understandable for everybody. All right, motion to postpone. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Bill, are you in favor?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed?
Yes.
Okay, so then we have 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Am I correct in that? All right, then the motion passes to postpone. I think that takes care of all our items on tonight's agenda. Anybody have any announcements? And we have a Easter egg hunt coming up in April on Saturday at Fireman's Park. I believe it starts at 10 or 11 o'clock. So please check your calendar for that. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for all your input and have a good night. Yeah, well, hell yeah. I'm going to sit on the other side.